The stars above Earth had always felt calm. For 50 years, humans had lived among the other star nations in peace. They traded goods, shared knowledge, and built friendships with strange new species. But peace never lasts forever. On a cold morning in the year 2147, that peace ended in fire. It started at the edge of the solar system, near the orbit of Neptune. A massive fleet appeared out of nowhere. Hundreds of dark ships, shaped like blades and hooks, dropped out of warp space in perfect formation. They did not send a message. They did not ask for talks. They simply opened fire. This was the Karn Dominion, a warlike empire that had spent centuries conquering weaker worlds. They had heard about Earth from traders and spies. They were told humans were soft, peaceful, and easy to defeat. The Karn leaders wanted Earth's resources, its position in the galaxy, and its people as slaves. So they came in force, ready to crush any resistance in a single strike. Admiral Elena Cross stood on the bridge of the ESS Valiant, the flagship of Earth's outer defense fleet. She was 52 years old, with short gray hair and sharp brown eyes that had seen too many hard days. She had served in the fleet for 30 years, and she loved her ship and her crew like family. When the alarms rang out that morning, she felt her stomach drop. "Report," she said, her voice steady despite the fear rising inside her. "Admiral, we have over 400 enemy contacts," said Lieutenant Marcus Webb, the young officer at the sensor station. His hands were shaking. They just appeared. No warning, no signal. "Shields up. All ships, form defensive line," Cross ordered. "Send word to Earth Command. Tell them we are under attack." The fleet moved into position. 30 of Earth's finest warships, cruisers, destroyers, and 2 battleships, lined up against the invaders. It should have been a fair fight. Earth's navy was strong, built with decades of hard work and clever engineering. But the Karn ships were something else. Their weapons cut through Earth's shields like a knife through paper. Their armor shrugged off human missiles as if they were pebbles. The first wave of Karn fighters tore into the Earth fleet in minutes. The battleship ESS Freedom took a direct hit to its reactor core and exploded, taking 1,200 crew members with it. Admiral Cross watched the bright flash on her screen and felt her heart break. "Return fire. All batteries, target their lead ships," she shouted. The Valiant fired everything it had. Beams of energy and streams of missiles flew toward the enemy. Some hit their marks, but the damage was small. The Karn ships barely slowed down. They kept coming, closing the distance, firing back with weapons that glowed a sickly green. Webb's voice cracked as he called out the losses. "We've lost the Hammer. We've lost the Falcon. The Star Guard is dead in the water, taking heavy damage." Cross gripped the edge of her command chair. She had trained for battle her whole life, but nothing had prepared her for this. The enemy was not just stronger. They were on another level entirely. Every ship Earth sent against them was destroyed within minutes. It was not a battle. It was a slaughter. "Admiral, we're losing power to the main shield array," said her engineer, Chief Petty Officer Dana Reyes. "If we take another hit like that last one, we won't survive it." Cross looked at the tactical display. Red icons, Karn ships, filled the screen. Blue icons, her own fleet, were disappearing one by one. In the span of 20 minutes, Earth's outer defense fleet had gone from 30 ships to 11. "All ships, fall back to the second line," Cross ordered, her voice tight. "We cannot hold this position." But falling back did not help. The Karn ships were faster than anything Earth had built. They chased down the retreating fleet and picked off the stragglers one by one. Cross watched helplessly as the cruiser ESS Meridian took 3 hits in a row and broke apart, spilling escape pods into the black of space. Escape pods that the Karn fighters shot down without mercy. "They're not taking prisoners," Webb said quietly, horror in his voice. Cross felt anger rise inside her chest, hot and sharp. "Then we make them pay for every life they take." The Valiant turned to face a group of 3 Karn cruisers head-on. Cross ordered every weapon system to fire at once, pouring all of the ship's power into offense and leaving the shields weak. It was a desperate move, but she had no other choice. The Valiant's guns tore into the lead Karn cruiser, and for the first time that day, an enemy ship actually took real damage. Fire bloomed across its hull, and it began to drift, powerless. "Yes," Webb shouted. "We hit one, Admiral. We actually hit one." But the victory was short. The other two Karn cruisers turned their full attention on the Valiant. Their weapons fired together, and the ship shook violently as the shields collapsed under the strain. "Hull breach on decks 4 through 9, Reyes called out. "We're losing atmosphere." "Seal those sections," Cross ordered. "Get medical teams down there now." The Valiant limped through space, smoke pouring from a dozen wounds in its hull. Around it, the last of Earth's outer defense fleet was falling apart. Ship after ship went dark, destroyed or crippled beyond use. Within the hour, only 3 Earth vessels remained combat-capable, and the Karn fleet had barely slowed down. Back on Earth, Fleet Command watched the disaster unfold on their monitors in stunned silence. General Thomas Okafor, the head of Earth's military, stood in the command center with his hands clenched into fists. He had believed, like everyone else, that Earth's navy was strong enough to hold the line. Now he understood how wrong that belief had been. "Sir, the outer fleet is finished," said his aide, a young captain named Priya Nair. Her voice trembled. "What are your orders?" Okafor stared at the screen for a long moment. "Order Admiral Cross to retreat to Earth orbit. Pull every ship we have left. We need to protect the planet directly now." "Sir, even if we gather every remaining warship, we won't have enough to stop them," Nair said. "The Karn fleet outnumbers us 5 to 1, and their technology is superior." "I know," Okafor said quietly, "but we have no other choice. We fight for our home until the very end." Word of the disaster spread quickly across Earth. News channels showed grim reports of the battle. Families gathered around screens, watching in fear as the story of Earth's crushed fleet unfolded. In cities across the globe, people looked up at the sky, wondering if this would be the day everything changed forever. Aboard the Valiant, Admiral Cross received the order to retreat. She hesitated for only a moment before giving the command. Pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. Her people needed her alive, not dead in a pointless last stand. "Set course for Earth," she said. "All remaining ships, form up and retreat together. We protect each other on the way home." As the battered fleet turned and limped away from the Karn armada, Cross allowed herself one look back at the battlefield. Wreckage floated everywhere. Broken hulls, drifting bodies, the remains of ships that had served Earth faithfully for years. It was a scene of complete defeat, and she knew it was only the beginning. The Karn fleet did not chase immediately. Instead, their commander, a cold and calculating being named Voss Thren, ordered his ships to regroup and advance slowly toward Earth. He had studied human history and knew that a wounded enemy sometimes fought harder than an unwounded one. He wanted no mistakes. He wanted Earth's surrender to be total and complete. "Send a message to the human command," Thren ordered his communications officer. "Tell them their fleet is destroyed. Tell them resistance is pointless. Offer them one chance to surrender before we continue our advance." The message reached Earth Command within the hour. General Okafor read it with a heavy heart. Surrender meant slavery for humanity. Fighting on meant likely destruction. Neither choice offered any hope. "We will not surrender," Okafor said finally, addressing his staff. "But we need every advantage we can find. Search every record, every old base, every mothballed project. If there is anything left that can help us, I want it found." It was Captain Priya Nair who found the first clue. Deep in Earth Command's old archives, buried under decades of dust and forgotten files, she discovered a project so secret that even most senior officers had never heard of it. It was called Project Leviathan, a warship built nearly 40 years earlier, during a tense standoff with another alien power. The standoff had ended peacefully before the ship was ever needed, and the project had been shelved, its records sealed, its location kept secret, even from most of the government. "Sir," Nair said, bringing the file to Okafor with shaking hands. "You need to see this." Okafor read through the file with growing disbelief. Project Leviathan had produced a single ship, a Dreadnought-class vessel, larger than anything currently in Earth's fleet, built using experimental technology that had been years ahead of its time. The ship had been placed into deep storage in a hidden shipyard on the far side of the moon, sealed away and forgotten as newer, cheaper ships took its place in the budget. "Is this real?" Okafor asked. "Is this ship still out there?" "According to the last maintenance log, yes," Nair said. But that log is 31 years old, sir. We don't know what condition the ship is in now. We don't even know if its systems still function. Okafor looked at the file for a long moment, then at the tactical display showing the Karn fleet slowly advancing toward Earth. He thought about the thousands of lives already lost, and the billions more that hung in the balance. "Find a crew," he said. "Find anyone who knows anything about this ship's design. We are going to wake it up." Nair nodded and hurried away to begin the search. Okafor turned back to the display, watching the red dots creep closer to Earth. He did not know if this old, forgotten ship could make any difference against an enemy fleet of hundreds, but it was the only hope they had left, and he intended to use it. While Fleet Command searched desperately for answers, life on Earth had already begun to change. In New Delhi, a mother pulled her children close, as news reports played on the wall screen, showing grainy footage of the battle at the edge of the solar system. In London, crowds gathered outside government buildings, demanding answers from officials who had none to give. In Lagos, in Tokyo, in Sao Paulo, the same fear spread through every home. The fear that everything humanity had built might soon be taken from them. Admiral Cross felt that fear too, though she hid it well behind a mask of calm command. As the Valiant limped back toward Earth, alongside the remains of her fleet, she spent long hours in her quarters reviewing the battle data, searching for anything she might have done differently. She found nothing. The truth was simple and terrible. Earth's fleet, built with decades of careful planning and pride, had been outclassed in every way that mattered. "Admiral, you should rest," Webb said gently, finding her still awake hours after the retreat began. "You've been at this for 16 hours straight." "I can't rest, Lieutenant," Cross replied, not looking up from her screen. "Not while I'm trying to understand how we lost so badly, so fast." Webb hesitated before speaking again. "Ma'am, I don't think it was anything we did wrong. I think we were just outmatched. Completely." Cross finally looked up at him, her eyes tired but sharp. "That's exactly what worries me, Marcus. If we were simply outmatched, then throwing more of our ships at them won't change anything. We need something different, something they don't expect." She had no idea, in that moment, just how close such a thing already was to being found. Meanwhile, aboard the Karn flagship, Commander Thren reviewed the battle reports with cold satisfaction. His analysts had studied the human fleet's tactics, weapons, and defensive patterns, and found them predictable, even primitive compared to the many other species the Dominion had conquered before. "Send word to the Dominion Council," Thren instructed his communications officer. "Inform them that Earth's conquest proceeds ahead of schedule. Their military has already been broken. Full occupation should be complete within the week." His second-in-command, a sharp-eyed officer named Kalis Drum, studied the tactical reports with slightly more caution than his commander. "Sir, our scouts report several unusual energy signatures near this species' moon. Should we investigate before advancing further?" Thren waved a clawed hand dismissively. "Old mining equipment, most likely, or decommissioned infrastructure. This species has shown us nothing to suggest hidden strength. We proceed as planned. Advance the fleet toward the home world at standard speed. Let them stew in their fear a little longer before we finish this." Drum said nothing more, though a flicker of unease remained in the back of his mind. He had learned, over many campaigns, that overconfidence was often the first sign of trouble to come. But he kept his doubts to himself, unwilling to challenge his commander's judgment without solid proof. Back on Earth, General Okafor called an emergency meeting of the Global Defense Council, gathering representatives from every major nation to discuss the crisis. The mood in the room was somber, fear evident on every face, as reports of the destroyed fleet were presented in stark detail. "We have perhaps 2 days before the enemy fleet reaches Earth orbit," Okafor told the assembled council members. "Our remaining combat-ready ships number less than 15. We do not have the strength to stop them through conventional means." "What about calling for help from our allies among the star nations?" asked one representative, a councilwoman from the European Union. "Surely someone owes us a debt, some alliance we can call upon." "Messages have been sent," Okafor confirmed, "but even our closest allies are days, perhaps weeks away by fastest travel. We cannot count on outside help arriving in time." The room fell into tense silence, the weight of their situation settling over everyone present. It was into this silence that Captain Nair's message arrived, informing Okafor of the discovery buried within the old archives. He read it twice on his personal display before standing to address the council once more. "There may be one option remaining," he said carefully. "A classified project from decades past, one many of you have likely never heard of. I need authorization to pursue it immediately, and I need it without delay." After a brief but intense debate, the council granted Okafor emergency authority to pursue whatever measures he deemed necessary. It was a decision born of desperation, but desperation, Okafor reflected as he left the chamber, sometimes led people to remarkable discoveries. Far above the moon's cratered surface, hidden inside a massive underground shipyard, sealed for over 3 decades, something stirred in the darkness. Dust that had not moved in 30 years, drifted gently, as ancient power systems, long dormant, began to hum softly back to life. Deep within the ship's core, a single light blinked on, then another, and another, as if the vessel itself sensed that it was needed once again. The shipyard itself had been built with incredible secrecy, its very existence known to fewer than 24 people across 3 decades. Solar panels hidden beneath layers of lunar dust had continued, faithfully and quietly, to trickle small amounts of power into backup systems throughout the long years of silence, just enough to keep the ship from falling into complete disrepair. It was this small mercy of forward planning, made by engineers who had hoped never to need it, that gave the Dominion's end any chance at all of answering Earth's call now. The ship's name, painted in faded letters along its massive hull, was barely visible under decades of grime. ESS Dominion's End. It had been built for a war that never came, forgotten by the very nation it was meant to protect. Now, as Earth faced its darkest hour, the old Dreadnought waited silently in the dark, its systems slowly waking, as if answering a call that had finally arrived. Somewhere in the vast blackness of space between the moon and the approaching enemy fleet, 2 very different fates were on a collision course. One was a proud alien empire, certain of easy victory over a weak and outmatched world. The other was a forgotten relic of human ingenuity, sleeping in the dark, waiting only for someone to remember that it existed. Neither Commander Thren nor his Dominion Council had any idea what truly waited for them in the shadows of Earth's own moon. And soon, they would learn just how costly that ignorance could be. Captain Priya Nair had spent the last 6 hours going through old personnel files, searching for anyone still alive who had worked on Project Leviathan. Most of the engineers and officers listed in the records were long retired or dead, but one name caught her eye: Dr. Samuel Osei, listed as the lead systems architect for the Dominion's End. According to his file, he was 81 years old and living quietly in a small coastal town in Ghana. Nair called General Okafor immediately. "Sir, I found someone. The chief architect of the ship. He's still alive." "Get him here," Okafor said. "Now." "Send a fast transport. We don't have time to waste." 3 hours later, Dr. Osei stood in Earth Command's central briefing room, leaning on a wooden cane, his eyes tired but sharp. He looked around at the modern screens and equipment with a mix of wonder and sadness. "I never thought I would see this room again," he said quietly. "I never thought anyone would need what we built." "Dr. Osei, we need your help," Okafor said, standing to greet him. "The Dominion's End may be Earth's only chance. Can you tell us about the ship? Can it still be brought back online?" Osei took a slow breath. The Dominion's End was built during the Vekar standoff, back in the 21st year of the Star Accord. We were told the Vekar Empire might attack Earth, so our government approved a secret project. One ship, built stronger and smarter than anything else in the fleet. We used experimental armor plating, a reactor core 3 times more powerful than standard designs, and a fully independent artificial intelligence to run the ship's systems. We called her AI Unit Atlas. "An AI ran the ship?" Nair asked, surprised. "By itself?" "Not entirely by itself," Osei said. "The ship needed a human crew for command decisions, but Atlas could manage every system on board: weapons, engines, repairs, even tactical planning. It was the most advanced thing we had ever built." Then the standoff with the Vekar ended peacefully, and the government decided the ship was too expensive to maintain. They sealed her away and told the public she was scrapped. In truth, she was hidden in a shipyard on the far side of the moon, kept in a low-power sleep mode, just in case she was ever needed. Okafor leaned forward. "Doctor, We need that ship ready to fight within days, maybe hours. Is that possible? Osei was quiet for a long moment. It will not be easy. The ship has been asleep for 31 years. Systems will need testing. The reactor will need to be restarted carefully, or it could fail catastrophically. And Atlas, I do not know what condition her programming is in after so long without proper maintenance. But if anyone can bring her back, it is the people who built her, and I know where to find them. Osei gave Nair a list of names, former engineers, technicians, and programmers who had worked on the Dominion's end decades earlier. Most were retired, scattered across the world. Within hours, Earth Command tracked down 12 of them, each one contacted personally and asked to return to service one final time. Every single one agreed without hesitation. Meanwhile, at Fleet Command, a young shuttle pilot named Kenji Ito was called into General Okafor's office. Kenji was 26 years old, sharp and quick-thinking, known for his skill flying dangerous supply routes through asteroid fields. He had no idea why he had been summoned to such a high-level meeting. "Lieutenant Ito," Okafor said, "you have been selected to fly Dr. Osei and his team to a classified location on the far side of the moon. This mission is top secret, and it may be the most important flight of your life." Kenji straightened his shoulders. "I won't let you down, sir." The shuttle carrying Osei, Nair, and the recovered engineering team launched from Earth within the hour. As they crossed the void between Earth and the moon, Kenji watched the growing shape of Luna through the cockpit window, wondering what exactly they were flying toward. The shipyard was hidden inside a massive crater on the moon's far side, its entrance disguised by decades of dust and broken rock, designed to look like natural terrain. Only a hidden signal, sent from a device Osei carried, opened the ancient blast doors, revealing a cavern large enough to hold a mountain. Inside, sitting silent and dark in a cradle of steel supports, was the ESS Dominion's End. Even after 31 years of sleep, the ship was breathtaking. It stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, far larger than any ship currently active in Earth's fleet. Its hull was a deep gunmetal gray, scarred by decades of dust but otherwise untouched, since no battle had ever damaged it. Massive weapon batteries lined its sides, and near the bow, a strange crystal-like structure glowed faintly, as if the ship's heart still beat, however slowly. "By God," Nair whispered, staring up at the massive vessel through the shuttle's window. "It's beautiful." "She was the finest thing we ever built," Osei said, his voice thick with emotion. "Let's wake her up." The engineering team moved fast once they landed. Osei directed them with practiced confidence, despite his age, guiding them through access points and control systems he remembered like old friends. Power cells were reconnected. Backup generators were fired up to provide the initial jolt of electricity needed to restart the ship's massive reactor core. "Reactor primary sequence beginning," said one of the engineers, a woman named Fatima al-Rashid who had worked as the ship's original reactor specialist. "Dr. Osei, this could go very badly if the core has degraded." "I know the risk," Osei said calmly, "but we have no choice. Begin the sequence." The team watched with held breath as lights along the reactor housing slowly began to glow. A low hum, quiet at first, grew steadily louder, filling the cavern with a deep vibration that everyone could feel through the floor. For a moment, nothing else happened, and worry began to spread among the team. Then, suddenly, the entire ship lit up. Lights flickered on across its massive hull, illuminating the dark cavern in a wash of white and blue light. The crystal structure near the bow began to pulse steadily, brighter and brighter, until it glowed like a small star. "Reactor is stable," al-Rashid called out, relief flooding her voice. "Core output at 40% and rising." Inside the ship's central control room, something else was happening. A soft chime echoed through empty corridors that had not heard a sound in over 3 decades. Screens flickered to life, displaying lines of code and system diagnostics. And then, a calm, clear voice spoke through the ship's speakers, filling the silence for the first time in 31 years. "Systems restored. Reactor core stable. Hull integrity at 98%. Awaiting command authorization." The voice paused, as if processing something. "This unit recognizes designation. Dr. Samuel Osei, Chief Systems Architect. Query: how much time has passed since last activation?" Osei, standing in the control room now with Nair and several engineers, felt tears well up in his eyes as he heard the familiar voice. "Hello, Atlas. It has been 31 years. There was a brief pause. Understood. This unit will require a full systems review before combat readiness can be confirmed. May I ask the nature of the current situation, Dr. Osei? Earth is under attack, Osei said. A powerful alien fleet called the Karn Dominion has destroyed most of our navy. They are advancing toward the planet. We need you, Atlas. We need the Dominion's end to fight. Another pause, longer this time, as if the AI was processing the weight of what it had just been told. This unit was built for exactly this purpose. Combat readiness will be prioritized immediately. However, 31 years of dormancy means many systems require testing before they can be trusted in battle. This unit estimates 48 hours are needed for a full readiness check. We don't have 48 hours, Nair said urgently. The Karn fleet could reach Earth in as little as 30 hours. Atlas processed this information. Understood. This unit will prioritize critical combat systems, weapons, shields, engines, and structural integrity. Non-essential systems will be brought online during transit. Estimated time to minimal combat readiness, 18 hours. Osei nodded firmly. Do it, Atlas. Do whatever you need to do. Over the following hours, the shipyard became a hive of activity. Engineers swarmed over every section of the Dominion's end, testing systems, replacing worn parts, and running diagnostics under Atlas's careful guidance. The AI proved remarkably capable, directing repair drones and prioritizing tasks with a precision that impressed even the most experienced engineers. Meanwhile, General Okafor faced a difficult decision back on Earth. The Dominion's end needed a crew, not just engineers to keep her running, but officers and soldiers to command her weapons, fly her fighters, and lead her into battle. With Earth's fleet already destroyed, there were few experienced officers left to spare. He thought immediately of Admiral Cross. Her ship, the Valiant, had survived the first battle, badly damaged but repairable. She had shown courage and skill in the face of overwhelming odds. If anyone could command the Dominion's end, it was her. Cross received the summons while still overseeing repairs on the Valiant in Earth orbit. She read the orders twice, hardly believing what she was being asked to do. They want me to command a ship I've never even seen, she muttered to herself. She traveled to the moon shipyard within hours, arriving to find the massive Dreadnought fully lit and humming with power, engineers still working across its hull like ants on a giant creature. She stood at the base of the ship, craning her neck to take in its full size, feeling both amazed and intimidated. Admiral Cross, Osei greeted her as she stepped off her shuttle. Welcome to the Dominion's end. She's enormous, Cross said, staring upward. Is she really ready to fight? Not fully, Osei admitted. But Atlas believes she will be combat capable within the next 12 hours. That should be enough time before the Karn fleet arrives. Cross was led into the ship's central control room, where the calm voice of Atlas greeted her immediately. Admiral Elena Cross. This unit has reviewed your service record. 30 years of experience, 12 combat engagements, 3 commendations for valor. You are a suitable commanding officer for this vessel. Cross raised an eyebrow, unused to being evaluated by a machine. Thank you, I think. Atlas, can you really get this ship into fighting shape in time? This unit will do everything within its capability to ensure success, Atlas replied. However, full combat effectiveness cannot be guaranteed. Many systems remain untested after 31 years. There is risk in this mission, Admiral. There's risk in every mission, Cross said. Right now, this ship is Earth's best chance. We don't have the luxury of waiting for perfect conditions. Over the following hours, Cross worked alongside Atlas and the engineering teams, learning the ship's systems and preparing for the battle ahead. A skeleton crew of nearly 2,000 volunteers, gathered from Earth's remaining military forces and civilian specialists, began arriving to fill the Dominion's end's many stations. Among them was Lieutenant Marcus Webb, transferred from the Valiant, eager to serve under Cross once again despite the danger. As the final hours ticked away, reports came in that the Karn fleet had resumed its advance toward Earth, moving steadily closer with each passing hour. Cross stood on the massive bridge of the Dominion's end, looking out at the stars through the reinforced viewport, knowing that soon, this old, forgotten ship would face its first true test. "Atlas," she said quietly, "are we ready?" There was a brief pause before the AI responded. "Combat systems report 91% operational capacity. Weapons are online. Shields are functional, though not yet fully calibrated. Engines are stable. This unit believes we are as ready as circumstances allow, Admiral." Cross nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the moment settle over her. "Then let's take her out. Set course for Earth. It's time this old ship remembered what she was built for." Before the ship departed, Cross gathered her senior staff one final time in the shipyard's control tower, looking out at the massive vessel through thick reinforced glass. Dr. Osei stood beside her, his cane tapping softly against the metal floor as he moved to join the group. "I want everyone to understand what we're about to do," Cross said, addressing the small crowd of officers and engineers. "This ship has never fired a shot in anger. Her systems, however well tested in the last few hours, have not faced the strain of real combat in 31 years. We are taking a tremendous risk." "We understand the risk, Admiral," said Al-Rashid, standing at the front of the group. "But we also understand what happens if we don't try. I'd rather die fighting aboard this ship than watch Earth fall without ever giving her a chance." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathered crew. Cross nodded, feeling a swell of pride at their courage, despite the danger ahead. "Then let's not waste any more time. To your stations, everyone." As the crew dispersed to prepare for departure, Osei lingered behind with Cross for a moment. "Admiral, there is something you should know about Atlas," he said quietly. "What is it, Doctor?" "When we built her, we didn't just create a system to manage weapons and engines. We gave her the ability to learn, to adapt, to make her own judgments within certain limits. Some of my colleagues worried we had given a machine too much independence. I always believed it was necessary, that a ship facing an unknown enemy would need an intelligence capable of thinking for itself, not simply following pre-written commands." Cross considered this. "Are you telling me Atlas might disobey orders if she disagrees with them?" "No," Osei said. "I'm telling you that Atlas will always follow the chain of command, but she will also tell you honestly if she believes a decision is unwise. Listen to her counsel, Admiral. In my experience, she is rarely wrong." Cross nodded slowly, filing the information away as she made her way toward the ship's boarding ramp. The sheer scale of the Dominion's end struck her again as she walked its length toward the main entrance. Corridors wide enough to drive a ground vehicle through, ceilings high enough to make her feel small and insignificant beneath them. Inside, the ship hummed with quiet energy, lights glowing steadily along every corridor as systems continued to come online under Atlas's careful management. Crew members hurried past her, carrying equipment, checking stations, calling out status updates to each other as they settled into their new posts. It was controlled chaos, the kind Cross had seen many times before on ships preparing for deployment, though never on a scale quite like this. She made her way to the bridge, a vast circular chamber positioned near the ship's bow, its massive viewport offering a breathtaking view of the shipyard's cavern walls. Various stations lined the room, each manned by officers still familiarizing themselves with unfamiliar controls. "Admiral on the bridge," Webb called out as Cross entered, and the crew straightened at their stations. "At ease," Cross said, moving to the central command chair. "Atlas, report." "All primary systems report ready for departure, Admiral," Atlas replied. "Shipyard doors are opening. This unit recommends a gradual acceleration profile to allow continued monitoring of engine performance during initial movement." "Understood. Take us out slowly, Atlas. Let's not push her too hard right away." The massive shipyard doors, hidden beneath the lunar surface for over 3 decades, ground open, with a deep rumble that Cross could feel through the deck plating beneath her feet. Sunlight, harsh and unfiltered by any atmosphere, spilled into the cavern for the first time in 31 years, illuminating the Dominion's end in its full glory. "Beginning departure sequence," Atlas announced. "Engine output at 15% and rising steadily." The ship shuddered gently as its massive engines engaged, pushing it slowly forward through the widening gap in the lunar surface. Cross watched through the viewport as the gray, cratered landscape of the moon slid past, replaced gradually by the endless black of space, dotted with countless stars. "We're clear of the shipyard, Admiral," Webb reported. "Engine output stable at 30%. "Good. Bring us around toward Earth. Cross ordered. Atlas, continue bringing remaining systems online during transit. I want to know about any problems the moment they appear. Understood, Admiral. This unit will provide continuous status updates. As the Dominion's end turned gracefully in space, its massive hull catching the sunlight in a way that made it gleam like polished steel, Cross allowed herself a brief moment to appreciate the sight. For 31 years, this incredible vessel had waited in darkness, forgotten by the very people it had been built to protect. Now, it moved through space once more, carrying the hopes of an entire planet on its broad shoulders. Dr. Osei, watching from an observation station near the bridge, felt tears prick at his eyes as he watched his life's greatest work finally fulfill its purpose. Decades of doubt, of wondering whether his years of effort had been wasted on a ship that would never see use, melted away in that moment. She flies as beautifully as I remembered, he murmured to himself. Sensors indicate optimal engine performance, well within expected parameters, Atlas added, as if sensing his thoughts. This unit shares your satisfaction, Dr. Osei, though perhaps expressed differently. Osei smiled at that, a genuine warmth spreading through him despite the danger that lay ahead. Whatever happened in the battle to come, he knew that his creation had already accomplished something remarkable, simply by waking up when Earth needed her most. On the bridge, Cross studied the tactical display showing Earth growing larger ahead of them, and beyond it, the distant red icons marking the approaching Karn fleet. The battle that would decide humanity's fate was drawing steadily closer, and she intended to meet it head-on, with everything this remarkable, forgotten ship could offer. The massive Dreadnought's engines roared to life at full power, and slowly, gracefully, the ESS Dominion's end began to move out of the shipyard that had been her prison for 31 years, heading toward the stars and the battle that awaited her. The ESS Dominion's end cut through space like a mountain given purpose. Admiral Cross stood on the bridge, watching the stars streak past as the ship built up speed on its way toward Earth. Around her, the crew worked at their stations, still learning the rhythms of a vessel most of them had only stepped aboard hours earlier. Admiral, we're approaching Earth orbit, Webb reported from his station. General Okafor is requesting a status update. Put him through, Cross said. The main screen flickered, showing General Okafor's tired face. Behind him, Cross could see the chaos of Earth Command, officers moving quickly between stations, screens flashing with reports of the approaching Karn fleet. Admiral Cross, good to see that ship moving, Okafor said. What's your status? We're at 91% combat readiness, and climbing, Cross replied. Atlas is confident we'll reach 95% before we reach the enemy fleet. That will have to be good enough, Okafor said grimly. The Karn fleet has picked up speed. Current estimates put them at Earth's doorstep within 6 hours. We need every ship we have in position. Understood. We'll be ready, Cross said. After the call ended, Cross turned to the ship's tactical display, studying the positions of the approaching enemy fleet. Hundreds of red icons filled the screen, a wall of firepower advancing steadily toward Earth. Her stomach tightened at the sight, but she pushed the fear down. Fear would not help her crew now. Atlas, give me a full analysis of the enemy fleet, she said. The AI's calm voice responded immediately. Analysis complete, Admiral. The Karn fleet consists of 412 vessels, ranging from light fighters to heavy cruisers. Their weapons technology is significantly advanced compared to current Earth standards, utilizing plasma-based cannons and shield-piercing munitions. However, this unit has identified several weaknesses in their design. Weaknesses? Cross leaned forward, interested. Go on. Karn ships rely heavily on centralized shield generators, typically located near the ship's engine core. If this generator is destroyed, the entire shield system fails instantly. Additionally, Karn fleet tactics favor coordinated group attacks, which means their ships often cluster closely together during engagements. This creates opportunities for area effect weapons. Cross allowed herself a small, grim smile. Area effect weapons. Do we have anything like that? This vessel is equipped with the Hammerfall missile system, Atlas replied, a weapon designed specifically to counter tightly grouped enemy formations. It was never used in combat, as the standoff with the Vekker Empire ended before deployment was necessary. This unit can confirm the system remains functional after recent testing. Good, Cross said. We'll need every advantage we can get. Before the ship reached the halfway point in its journey back to Earth, Cross called a brief meeting with Dr. Osei and Atlas to discuss the ship's remaining untested systems. She wanted no surprises once the battle began, and she trusted Osei's knowledge of the vessel's original design more than anyone else aboard. "Doctor, walk me through anything we haven't yet confirmed is working properly," she said, standing in the ship's systems core alongside him. Osei studied a long list of diagnostics, scrolling across a nearby screen. Most critical systems have been verified. Weapons, shields, engines, life support, all functioning within expected parameters. There are a handful of secondary systems still being tested, mostly related to long-range sensors and some of the ship's more experimental defensive countermeasures. "Countermeasures?" Cross asked, curious. "Small drone-based decoys, designed to confuse enemy targeting systems," Osei explained. "They were considered cutting-edge technology when this ship was designed, though I suspect the rest of the galaxy has caught up somewhat in 31 years. Atlas, can we count on them if needed?" Cross asked. "This unit has successfully tested drone deployment during the recent diagnostic period," Atlas confirmed. "Effectiveness against modern Karn targeting systems cannot be guaranteed, but this unit believes they may still provide some tactical value, particularly during coordinated fleet maneuvers." Cross nodded, filing the information away. Every small advantage would matter once the fighting began. As the Dominion's end continued its approach toward Earth, Cross used the remaining hours to prepare her crew as best she could. She walked the ship's corridors, speaking with soldiers and technicians, trying to build confidence, despite the uncertainty they all felt. Many of the crew were young, some fresh out of training, thrown into the most important battle of their lives, aboard a ship that had never once seen combat. In the ship's fighter bay, Cross found Lieutenant Kenji Ito, the young pilot who had flown Osei's team to the Moon shipyard. He had volunteered to stay aboard as a fighter pilot, eager to do more than just fly transport routes. "Nervous, Lieutenant?" Cross asked, watching him check over his fighter craft. Kenji looked up, startled to see the Admiral standing beside him. "A little, ma'am. I've never flown in real combat before, just training simulations." "Everyone on this ship is facing something new today," Cross said. "Even this ship herself. But sometimes the people who don't know what they can't do are the ones who surprise everyone." Kenji smiled slightly at that. "I'll do my best, Admiral. That's all any of us can do," Cross replied, before continuing her walk through the ship. Dr. Osei remained aboard as well, working alongside Atlas to fine-tune the ship's systems during the final hours before battle. Despite his age, he moved through the engineering sections with energy Cross had not expected, driven by a desire to see his creation succeed after so many years of being forgotten. "You could have stayed on Earth, Doctor," Cross told him during a brief visit to engineering. "You've already done so much." Osei shook his head firmly. "I built this ship. I owe it to her, and to the crew who will fight in her, to see this through. Besides, Atlas may need my help if anything unexpected happens." As if responding to the mention of its name, Atlas's voice spoke up through the nearby console. "Dr. Osei's presence has increased overall system confidence by an estimated 12%. His continued assistance is appreciated." Osei chuckled softly. Even after 31 years, she still has that dry sense of humor. 3 hours before the fleet's arrival at Earth, Cross gathered her senior officers in the ship's briefing room to finalize their battle plan. Around the table sat Webb, now serving as her tactical officer, Al-Rashid overseeing engineering, and several other officers pulled together from the remnants of Earth's shattered military. "Here's what we know," Cross began, gesturing to the holographic display showing the Karn fleet's approach. "The enemy outnumbers us badly. Even with the Dominion's end joining Earth's remaining ships, we'll be facing over 400 vessels with less than 20 of our own." "Those aren't good odds, Admiral," said one of the officers grimly. "No, they're not," Cross agreed. "But we have advantages the Karn don't expect. This ship is more powerful than anything they've seen from us so far, and Atlas has identified weaknesses in their formation tactics we can exploit. Our plan is simple. We use the Dominion's end as the anchor point for Earth's defense. Every other ship forms up around us, using our shields and firepower as cover, while we target the enemy's shield generators directly." Webb studied the tactical display closely. "If we can break their shields fleet-wide, our other ships might actually stand a chance against them." That's the idea, Cross said. Atlas, show them the Hammerfall system. The display shifted, showing a detailed diagram of the ship's missile system. The Hammerfall system fires a spread of guided munitions, designed to seek out and strike multiple targets within a clustered formation, Atlas explained. Given the Karn fleet's tendency toward close grouping, this weapon should prove highly effective during the initial engagement. We'll only get one real shot at surprise, Cross said. Once they know what we're capable of, they'll adapt. So we make that first strike count. The officers spent the remaining hours refining the plan, assigning roles, and preparing their stations for battle. Cross felt a strange mixture of fear and determination settle over her as the countdown to engagement continued. She had led ships into battle before, but never anything like this. Never with the fate of an entire planet resting on the outcome. As the Dominion's end finally reached Earth orbit, Cross returned to the bridge to find the remainder of Earth's fleet gathering around her ship. It was a small, battered group, the Valiant, still bearing scars from the first battle, along with a handful of other cruisers and destroyers that had survived or been hastily repaired. Compared to the massive Dreadnought, they looked small and fragile, but Cross felt a fierce pride seeing them assemble regardless. All ships reporting ready, Admiral, Webb said. General Okafor is standing by. The main screen showed Okafor once more, his expression tense but resolute. Admiral Cross, the Karn fleet will arrive within the hour. This is it. Earth is counting on all of you. We won't let them down, General, Cross said firmly, though inside, doubt still gnawed at her. She was asking her crew, her fellow officers, and an experimental AI system to face impossible odds. But there was no other choice left. As the final minutes ticked by, the crew of the Dominion's End took their positions throughout the ship. In the fighter bay, Kenji Ito climbed into his cockpit alongside dozens of other pilots, checking his systems one final time. In engineering, Al-Rashid and her team stood ready to respond to any damage the ship might take. On the bridge, Cross stood at the center of it all, watching the approaching red dots on the tactical display grow steadily larger. Atlas, she said quietly. Final systems check. All systems report combat ready, Admiral, Atlas replied. Weapons at 100%, shields at 96%, and stable. Engines fully operational. This unit is ready to engage the enemy. Cross took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle firmly on her shoulders. Behind her, through the massive viewport, Earth hung in space, blue and green and beautiful, utterly unaware of how close it stood to disaster. Then let's give them a welcome they won't forget, Cross said. All hands, prepare for battle. The Karn fleet emerged from the darkness of space like a storm cloud rolling in. Hundreds of dark ships moving in tight, disciplined formation. Commander Voss Thren stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the small human fleet gathering to meet him with something close to amusement. Pathetic, he muttered to his second-in-command. They gather what little remains of their navy for one final, useless stand. This will end quickly. But as his sensors focused on the massive vessel at the center of the human formation, Thren's confidence wavered, just slightly. This ship was unlike anything his scouts had reported. It was larger than any vessel his fleet had encountered from this species before, its design radiating a kind of raw power that gave him pause. Unknown vessel detected, his sensor officer reported. Designation unclear. Power readings are significant. Thren studied the massive ship for a long moment, a flicker of caution crossing his mind before he dismissed it. No matter. Whatever this ship is, it cannot stand against our entire fleet. Signal all ships. Advance formation. We end this today. As the Karn fleet closed the final distance toward Earth, Admiral Cross watched the enemy ships fill her tactical display, an overwhelming wall of red closing in around her small, defiant fleet. She glanced once more at the blue and green planet behind her, then turned her full attention forward. Atlas, she said, her voice steady despite the storm building inside her. Ready the Hammerfall system. Hammerfall system armed and ready, Admiral, Atlas replied. Awaiting your command. Before the order to fire, in the final quiet minutes as the two fleets closed the distance, Cross found herself thinking of her father, a merchant sailor who had taught her as a child that the sea, like space, respected no one's fear. He had died years ago, long before Earth had even joined the wider community of star nations, but his lessons about steady nerves and quiet courage had stayed with her through every year of her service. She thought too of the crew now scattered throughout the ship, young Kenji Ito in his fighter, nervous but determined, Al-Rashid in engineering, ready to keep the ship alive no matter what damage it took, Dr. Osei, who had waited 31 years to see his creation finally serve its purpose. Every one of them was trusting her with their lives, and she intended to honor that trust as best she could. Down in the fighter bay, Kenji sat in his cockpit, watching the massive shape of the Dominion's end through his canopy, as the ship prepared to engage the enemy. Beside him, in the neighboring launch tube, a young woman named Officer Priya Kapoor checked her own systems one final time. "First real fight," Kapoor said over the private comm channel between their two fighters. "Feels different than I imagined." "Yeah," Kenji agreed, his voice tighter than he wanted it to be. "Training never really prepares you for this part, does it? The waiting." "My grandmother used to say the waiting is always worse than the doing," Kapoor replied. "Once we're out there, moving, fighting, there won't be time to be scared." Kenji managed a small laugh despite his nerves. "I hope she's right." Across the ship, in the crowded medical bay, Dr. Amara Chen and her team prepared for what they all knew was coming. Wounded crew members, burns, injuries from any hull, breaches the ship might suffer. She had served on smaller vessels before, but never anything of this scale, never with stakes quite this high. "Everyone knows their stations," she told her team, checking supplies one final time. "We do our jobs, we save who we can, and we trust the crew up top to keep this ship in one piece." In the ship's massive engine room, Chief Engineer Al-Rashid moved between towering machinery, making final adjustments alongside her team. The deep hum of the reactor core filled the space around them, a steady, powerful heartbeat that seemed to promise strength even as uncertainty gripped everyone aboard. "Whatever happens out there," Al-Rashid told her engineers, "our job doesn't change. Keep the power flowing, keep the shields up, and keep this old girl in one piece. She's carried us this far. Let's carry her the rest of the way." Back on the bridge, Cross watched the tactical display as the distance between the two fleets closed to within firing range. The Karn ships, arranged in their tight, disciplined formation, looked almost beautiful in their deadly symmetry, a stark contrast to the small, ragged group of human vessels arrayed around the Dominion's end. "Admiral," Webb said quietly, "enemy fleet will be within optimal firing range in 10 seconds. Cross felt her pulse quicken, though her voice remained steady when she spoke. "All hands, this is Admiral Cross. Today, this ship and this fleet stand between the Karn Dominion and everything we hold dear. I will not pretend the odds favor us, but I have faith in every one of you, and I have faith in this remarkable ship that has waited 31 years for this very moment. Let's show them what humanity is truly capable of." Her words carried through every corridor of the ship, every fighter cockpit, every station on the smaller vessels gathered around her. In the fighter bay, Kenji felt a surge of determination replace his earlier fear. In engineering, Al-Rashid nodded firmly to herself, gripping her console with renewed purpose. Throughout the Dominion's end, 2,000 souls prepared themselves for the battle that would decide Earth's fate. 5 seconds to optimal range, Webb reported, his voice tight with tension. Cross watched the enemy fleet close within firing range, her heart pounding steadily in her chest. This was the moment everything had led to, the awakening of a forgotten ship, the desperate hope of an entire planet, all coming down to the next few seconds. "Fire," she said. The Hammerfall missile system unleashed its full fury the moment Admiral Cross gave the order. Dozens of missiles streaked out from the Dominion's end, splitting apart in flight to reveal hundreds of smaller warheads, each one guided by Atlas's precise targeting calculations. They swept toward the tightly clustered Karn formation, like a swarm of angry hornets. On the bridge of his flagship, Commander Thren barely had time to register the attack before it struck home. The missiles found their marks with terrifying accuracy, slamming into the shield generators of ship after ship throughout the Karn formation. Explosions bloomed across space in a chain of bright flashes, and one by one, the shields protecting dozens of Karn vessels flickered and failed. "What in the void was that?" Thren shouted, gripping the edge of his command console as his own ship shuddered from a nearby blast. "Status report, now." "Commander, we've lost shields on over 60 vessels," his sensor officer called out, panic creeping into his voice. That weapon. It targeted our shield generators directly. It knew exactly where to strike. Thren's confidence, so solid moments before, cracked under the weight of what he was seeing. No enemy had ever managed to strike so precisely, so effectively, against his fleet's greatest weakness. Impossible! Recalibrate our formation. Spread the ships out. Return fire on that vessel immediately. But the damage was already done. Aboard the Dominion's end, cheers erupted across the bridge as the crew watched dozens of enemy shield readings drop to 0 on their tactical display. Direct hits confirmed on 63 enemy vessels. Webb reported, disbelief and excitement mixing in his voice. Their formation is breaking apart, Admiral. Cross allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction before pushing forward. Now we press the advantage. Atlas, target the exposed ships with our main batteries. All fighters, launch and engage. Fighters launching, Atlas confirmed. Main batteries targeting exposed vessels. In the fighter bay, Kenji Ito felt his fighter shake loose from its docking clamp as he shot out into open space, joining dozens of other human pilots streaking toward the chaotic battlefield. His heart pounded in his chest, adrenaline and fear mixing together as he banked hard to avoid a stream of incoming enemy fire. "Stay tight, everyone," came the voice of Squadron Leader Diaz over the comm. "Target the ships with damaged shields. Hit them before they can regroup." Kenji spotted a Karn cruiser drifting nearby, its shields completely gone after being struck by the Hammerfall barrage. He dove toward it, firing his fighter's weapons into its exposed hull, watching small explosions ripple across its surface as his shots found their mark. It felt strange, almost unreal, to be doing real damage against an enemy that had seemed unstoppable just hours earlier. Back on the Dominion's End's bridge, the massive ship's main weapon batteries roared to life, firing beams of concentrated energy toward the scattered Karn fleet. Ship after ship took heavy damage, as the Dreadnought's firepower proved far superior to anything Earth had fielded before. Cross watched with fierce determination as her ship began carving a path of destruction through the enemy formation. "Admiral, the Valiant and the rest of our fleet are engaging the flanks," Webb reported. "They're taking advantage of the confusion to strike at weakened enemy ships." "Good," Cross said. "Keep pressure on their main formation. We can't let them regroup." But Thren was not finished. Despite the chaos, he was an experienced commander, and he quickly began issuing new orders, pulling his remaining organized ships into a tighter defensive position around his flagship, away from the reach of the Hammerfall system's remaining munitions. "Concentrate all fire on the large vessel," Thren ordered, his voice cold with fury. "Whatever it is, it must be destroyed before it does more damage." Dozens of Karn ships turned their weapons toward the Dominion's End, unleashing a storm of plasma fire that lit up the space around the massive Dreadnought. The ship shuddered under the impact as its shields absorbed blow after blow. "Shields down to 72%, Al-Rashid called out from engineering. "They're focusing everything on us." "Hold steady," Cross ordered, gripping her command chair as the ship rocked beneath another heavy strike. "Atlas, redirect power to forward shields. We need to weather this storm." "Redirecting power now," Atlas replied, its calm voice a steady anchor amid the chaos. "Shield integrity holding at 68%. This unit recommends continued offensive action to reduce incoming fire." Cross nodded, understanding the logic immediately. The best defense against the concentrated assault was to destroy the ships firing at her before they could destroy her first. Target their heaviest ships. Take out their firepower first. The Dominion's End's main batteries swung toward the largest Karn vessels bearing down on it, unleashing devastating barrages that tore through enemy armor with brutal efficiency. One by one, the heaviest Karn ships in the assault began to fall, their hulls breaking apart under the Dreadnought's overwhelming firepower. Elsewhere in the battle, the small remaining Earth fleet fought fiercely alongside their fighters, picking off isolated and damaged Karn vessels wherever they found them. The Valiant, still scarred from the earlier battle, moved with surprising agility, striking hard at enemy ships before retreating to avoid heavy return fire. "Admiral Cross, this is Captain Reyes aboard the Valiant," came a voice over the comm, the ship's new commanding officer since Cross had transferred to the Dreadnought. "We've knocked out 4 more enemy cruisers, but we're taking damage. Requesting permission to fall back and regroup." "Permission granted," Cross replied. "Fall back and support the fighters. We'll keep drawing their fire." As the battle raged on, Kenji Ito found himself in the thick of the fighting, weaving between explosions and enemy fire as he fought to protect the larger ships. He watched in awe as the Dominion's end absorbed blow after blow, striking back with devastating force each time. It was like watching a mountain fight against a swarm of angry insects, and slowly but surely, the mountain was winning. But the Karn fleet was far from defeated. Thren, desperate to salvage the battle, ordered a new tactic. He pulled a group of his fastest, most heavily armed ships into a tight spearhead formation, aiming to punch straight through the human defenses and strike the Dominion's end at close range, where its massive weapons would be less effective. "Admiral, I'm detecting a new enemy formation," Webb reported urgently. "They're moving fast, heading straight for us. Looks like they're trying to close the distance for a point-blank assault." Cross studied the tactical display, watching the spearhead of Karn ships bearing down on her position. "Atlas, can our point defense systems handle an attack at that range?" "Point defense systems will provide partial protection," Atlas replied. "However, this unit recommends deploying fighters to intercept the formation before it reaches optimal engagement range." "Do it," Cross ordered. "All fighters, converge on the incoming enemy spearhead. We cannot let them get close." Kenji's fighter squadron received the new orders and banked hard, racing to intercept the approaching Karn ships. The two groups collided in a chaotic storm of weapons fire, explosions blooming across the void as human pilots fought desperately to slow the enemy advance. "There's too many of them," one of the pilots shouted over the comm, panic evident in his voice. "We can't stop them all." Kenji gritted his teeth, weaving through incoming fire as he targeted the lead Karn ship in the formation. "Focus fire on the lead vessel. If we can break their formation, the rest might scatter." The human pilots concentrated their attacks on the lead ship, pouring everything they had into its shields. Slowly, painfully, the shields began to buckle, and finally, with a bright flash, the lead Karn vessel exploded, sending debris scattering through the formation behind it. The explosion disrupted the tight formation just enough to slow the remaining ships, giving the Dominion's end the precious seconds it needed. Cross seized the opportunity immediately. "Atlas, target the scattered formation with everything we have," she ordered. "Firing all available weapons," Atlas confirmed. The Dreadnought's full arsenal opened up on the disrupted Karn spearhead, tearing through the remaining ships before they could regroup and press their attack. Explosions lit up the battlefield as the enemy formation was systematically destroyed, ship after ship falling to the Dominion's end's overwhelming firepower. Elsewhere in the battle, Captain Reyes aboard the Valiant found herself facing 3 Karn destroyers alone after becoming separated from the main formation during the chaos. Her ship, still bearing scars from the very first battle weeks earlier, groaned under the strain of concentrated enemy fire. "Shields at 30%, her tactical officer shouted. "We can't take much more of this, Captain." Reyes gripped her chair tightly, refusing to let fear show in her voice. "Helm, evasive pattern delta. Weapons. Target their engines. If we can't outfight them, we'll outrun them long enough for support to arrive." The Valiant twisted and rolled through space, dodging incoming fire with skill born of desperation. One of the pursuing destroyers took a lucky hit to its engine array, slowing enough to fall behind, but the other two continued their relentless pursuit, weapons blazing. "Captain, this is Lieutenant Ito," came a voice over the comm. "My squadron is inbound to your position. Hold on just a little longer." Kenji's squadron broke away from their engagement near the Dominion's end, streaking across the battlefield toward the Valiant's position. They arrived just as the lead Karn destroyer lined up a devastating shot on the crippled cruiser's exposed engine section. "Break left, now," Kenji shouted, diving his fighter directly into the destroyer's firing line, unleashing everything his small craft carried. The distraction worked. The destroyer's shot went wide, missing the Valiant by mere meters, and Kenji's squadron swarmed the larger vessel, concentrating their fire until its shields finally failed. "Thank you, Lieutenant," Reyes said over the comm, relief evident in her voice. "We owe you one." "Just doing the job, Captain," Kenji replied, already banking his fighter back toward the main battle. "Stay safe out there." On his flagship, Thren watched the destruction of his elite strike force with growing horror. His confidence, once absolute, had been shattered by the unexpected strength of this single human vessel. He had underestimated Earth, and now his fleet was paying the price. "Commander, we've lost over half our combat strength," his sensor officer reported grimly. "That vessel alone has destroyed nearly 100 of our ships." Thren's hands clenched into fists at his sides. He had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest, a quick and total victory over a weak, unprepared species. Instead, he found himself facing an enemy far more dangerous than he had ever anticipated. "This is not over," Thren growled, though doubt had begun creeping into his voice. "Pull our remaining ships back, regroup at the rally point. We will find a way to destroy that vessel, whatever it takes." As the surviving Karn ships began a hasty retreat, pulling back from the battle in disarray, cheers erupted once again across the bridge of the Dominion's end. Cross allowed herself a small smile, though she knew the fight was far from finished. "Admiral, the enemy fleet is retreating," Webb reported, excitement clear in his voice. "They're falling back toward the outer system." "Don't celebrate yet," Cross said, though relief flooded through her as well. "They'll regroup and come back stronger. We need to use this time wisely." Atlas, damage report. "This vessel has sustained moderate damage to forward shield generators and minor damage to secondary weapon systems," Atlas reported. "However, all critical systems remain fully operational. Recommend immediate repairs during this lull in combat." "Make it happen," Cross ordered. "Get every available team working on repairs. We don't know how much time we have before they return." As the battered but victorious Earth fleet regrouped around the massive Dreadnought, Cross looked out at the wreckage scattered across space. Karn ships, destroyed by the hundreds, a testament to the power of the forgotten ship now fighting for Earth's survival. But she knew, deep down, that Thren would not give up so easily. The true battle for Earth's survival was only just beginning. Aboard his damaged flagship, Thren stood amid sparking consoles and smoke-filled corridors, surveying the wreckage of what had once been an overwhelming force. His officers moved around him in barely controlled panic, trying to restore order to a fleet that had been shattered in a matter of hours by an enemy they had believed weak and unprepared. "Commander, the Council will demand answers," Drum said carefully, approaching his superior with visible caution. "How do we explain the loss of nearly half our fleet to a species we assured them posed no real threat?" Thren's expression darkened with barely contained fury. "We explain nothing until we have secured victory. That vessel is dangerous, yes, but it is still one ship. Gather every remaining vessel capable of combat. We regroup, we adapt, and we return to finish what we started. And if that ship proves too strong even for our full remaining strength?" Drum asked quietly. Thren turned to face him fully, his eyes cold and hard. "Then we will have failed the Dominion, and failure is not something either of us can afford to consider. Gather the fleet, Drum. We attack again within hours." Meanwhile, aboard the Dominion's end, the crew used every precious minute of the lull to prepare for what they all suspected was coming. Cross moved through the ship's medical bay, checking on the wounded who had already been brought in during the first engagement. Dr. Chen worked tirelessly alongside her team, treating burns and injuries with practiced efficiency. "How many casualties?" Cross asked quietly, not wanting to disturb the ongoing work more than necessary. 12 wounded, 3 critical," Chen replied without looking up from her current patient. "No fatalities yet, Admiral, though I won't make promises about what comes next." Cross nodded grimly, moving on through the ship. In the fighter bay, she found Kenji sitting on the wing of his fighter, staring blankly at nothing, clearly still processing the chaos of the battle he had just survived. "Lieutenant Ito," Cross said, approaching quietly. Kenji startled, then straightened quickly. "Admiral, sorry, I was just thinking." "About the pilots we lost?" Cross asked gently. Kenji nodded, his young face suddenly looking older than his years. "Officer Kapoor didn't make it, ma'am. She was right beside me one moment, and then..." He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Cross placed a hand on his shoulder, understanding the weight he carried. "There's no easy way through moments like this, Lieutenant, but the fight isn't over, and Earth still needs pilots like you out there. I won't pretend the pain goes away, but you can carry it forward. Use it to fight even harder, for everyone's still counting on us." Kenji took a shaky breath, nodding slowly. "Understood, Admiral. I won't let her sacrifice be for nothing." As Cross continued her rounds through the ship, checking on crew morale and overseeing repair efforts, Dr. Osei worked closely with Atlas in the ship's central systems core, running diagnostics on every critical system in preparation for the battle they all knew was coming. Atlas, what's our overall combat readiness? Osei asked, studying the streams of data flowing across multiple screens. Weapon systems at 98% operational capacity, Atlas reported. Shield generators repaired to 90% efficiency. Engine performance remains stable. However, this unit calculates that a second engagement of similar intensity will likely exceed this vessel's sustainable combat threshold without additional strategic advantage. Osei frowned at this assessment. What kind of advantage are you suggesting? This unit has been analyzing archived data regarding an experimental system installed during original construction, but never completed, Atlas explained. Designation: Aegis Pulse. If properly calibrated, it could provide the decisive advantage necessary for victory in a prolonged engagement. Osei's eyes widened slightly with recognition. I remember that project. We shelved it, because the risks seemed too great for a ship that wasn't expected to see real combat. Circumstances have changed considerably, Doctor, Atlas replied evenly. This unit recommends bringing this option to Admiral Cross's attention at the earliest opportunity. Osei nodded slowly, already turning to find Cross and share this crucial piece of information, unaware that this very conversation would soon become the key to Earth's survival in the battle still to come. The lull in battle lasted only 3 hours, but for the crew of the Dominion's End, it felt like both a blessing and a curse. Every second was used to repair damage, restock weapons, and prepare for what everyone knew was coming next. Admiral Cross walked the ship's corridors during this brief respite, checking on her crew, offering words of encouragement where she could, though she carried her own deep worry hidden beneath a calm exterior. In engineering, Al-Rashid and her team worked tirelessly to repair the damaged shield generators, sparks flying as they replaced burnt-out components with backup parts. Dr. Osei moved among them, offering guidance drawn from decades-old memories of the ship's original construction. How are we looking? Cross asked, stepping into the engineering bay. Better than expected, Al-Rashid replied, wiping sweat from her brow. We've restored full shield capacity to 90%. Weapon systems are back to 100%. We took a beating out there, but she's holding together. She's stronger than any ship I've ever commanded, Cross said, looking around at the massive machinery surrounding her. I just hope it's enough. Osei approached, his expression thoughtful. Admiral, may I speak candidly? Of course, Doctor. The Karn commander lost nearly 200 ships in that engagement. That is a devastating loss for any military force, even one as large as theirs. When he returns, he will not make the same mistakes twice. He will adapt his tactics, and he will likely bring everything he has left. Cross nodded grimly. I expected as much. What are you suggesting? Atlas and I have been discussing a possibility, Osei said. There is a secondary weapon system aboard this ship that was never fully completed during initial construction, an experimental technology called the Aegis Pulse. It was designed to create a massive, short-range energy discharge capable of disabling enemy shields and weapons systems across a wide area. If we can complete its calibration in time, it could turn the tide of the coming battle. Why wasn't it finished originally? Cross asked. The project was deemed too experimental, too risky for a ship that was never expected to see real combat, Osei explained. The system draws an enormous amount of power from the reactor core, and if not properly managed, it could cause catastrophic damage to the ship itself. Cross considered this carefully. The risk was significant, but so was the threat they faced. How long would it take to complete the calibration? Atlas estimates 6 hours, working continuously, Osei said. Atlas, do you believe this is our best option? Cross asked, addressing the AI directly. Given the anticipated strength of the Karn counterattack, this unit calculates a 37% higher probability of successful defense of Earth if the Aegis Pulse system is completed and functional, Atlas replied. However, there remains an 8% risk of critical system failure during activation, which could result in significant damage to this vessel. Cross weighed the numbers carefully. An 8% risk was not nothing, but a 37% increase in Earth's chances of survival was too significant to ignore. Do it. Get that system online. We'll need every advantage we can get. The engineering team threw themselves into the task, working alongside Atlas's precise calculations to bring the experimental weapon system to life. Hours ticked by, tension building steadily, as reports came in of the Karn fleet regrouping in the outer system, gathering their remaining strength for a final assault. Commander Thren, aboard his flagship, addressed his surviving officers with grim determination. "We underestimated this enemy once. We will not make that mistake again. Every remaining ship will focus fire on that single vessel. We destroy it first, then we finish what we came here to do." His fleet, though badly reduced from its original size, still numbered over 200 ships. More than enough, Thren believed, to overwhelm the defenders if properly coordinated. He ordered a new formation, spreading his ships wider to avoid another devastating hammerfall strike, while designating a core group to focus entirely on destroying the Dominion's end. Back aboard the Dreadnought, 5 hours into the repair and calibration efforts, Webb reported grim news from the bridge. "Admiral, the Karn fleet is on the move again. They'll reach our position within the hour." Cross felt her stomach tighten. "Atlas, status on the Aegis pulse?" "Calibration is at 94% completion," Atlas reported. "This unit requires approximately 40 additional minutes to complete the process safely." "We might not have 40 minutes," Cross said grimly. "This unit is aware of the constraint," Atlas replied. "Accelerating calibration process. Risk of system instability increasing to 15% as a result." Cross made her decision quickly. "Do it. We need that weapon ready." As the Karn fleet closed in, the remaining ships of Earth's defense force gathered once more around the massive Dreadnought, a small but determined shield against the returning storm. Kenji Ito climbed back into his fighter, exhaustion and fear mixing with grim determination, as he prepared for another round of brutal combat. "This is it," Squadron Leader Diaz said over the comm, addressing the assembled pilots. "They're coming back for everything. We hold the line, no matter what." The Karn fleet emerged from the darkness once again, their formation wider and more cautious than before, clearly adapted to avoid another devastating missile strike. Thren's flagship led the charge, surrounded by a protective screen of his most heavily armed vessels. "Admiral, enemy fleet is within engagement range," Webb reported, tension thick in his voice. Cross studied the tactical display, watching the Karn formation spread out to minimize the hammerfall system's effectiveness. "Atlas, status on the Aegis pulse?" "Calibration complete," Atlas replied. "System is online and ready for activation, Admiral. However, this unit must note that the weapon has never been tested in live combat conditions." "Understood," Cross said. "Hold it in reserve until we need it most. All ships, engage the enemy." The battle erupted once more across the space above Earth, ships weaving and firing as explosions bloomed like deadly flowers throughout the void. The Karn fleet, wiser this time, avoided clustering too tightly, spreading their firepower carefully to overwhelm the Dominion's end through sheer numbers rather than risk another single devastating strike. "Shields down to 80%, Al-Rashid reported as the Dreadnought shuddered under coordinated fire from a dozen Karn cruisers. "They're hitting us from multiple angles. Concentrate return fire on their lead formations," Cross ordered. "Keep them from surrounding us completely." The battle raged fiercely, both sides taking heavy losses as the fight intensified. Kenji fought desperately alongside his fellow pilots, protecting the larger ships from swarms of enemy fighters, while dodging incoming fire that seemed to come from every direction. Explosions filled his vision constantly, friend and foe alike falling in the chaos of close combat. Aboard the Dominion's end, the situation grew increasingly dire as the Karn fleet's numbers began to tell. Despite the Dreadnought's raw power, it could not fight 200 ships alone forever, especially with the enemy carefully avoiding tactics that had proven so costly before. "Shields down to 55%, Al-Rashid called out urgently. "We're taking damage faster than we can repair it." Cross gripped her command chair tightly, watching as more of her small fleet fell to the overwhelming enemy numbers. The Valiant took a devastating hit, losing power to half its systems, drifting helplessly as Captain Reyes fought desperately to restore control. "Admiral, we're losing this fight," Webb said, fear evident beneath his professional tone. "We need something more, or we won't survive this." Cross made her decision in an instant. "Atlas, activate the Aegis pulse. Full power." "Activating Aegis pulse," Atlas confirmed. "Warning. System stability at 85%. Proceeding with activation as ordered." Deep within the Dominion's end, the ship's massive reactor core surged with power, channeling every available watt of energy into the experimental weapon system. The crystal-like structure near the ship's bow, which had first glowed to life in the lunar shipyard, blazed with brilliant light, growing brighter and brighter until it seemed to outshine the distant sun itself. Aegis pulse ready for discharge, Atlas announced. Recommend all friendly forces maintain minimum safe distance. All ships, pull back from our position immediately, Cross ordered urgently over the fleet-wide comm. Brace for energy discharge. The remaining Earth ships scattered away from the Dreadnought as quickly as their damaged engines could carry them. Kenji banked his fighter hard, racing away from the Dominion's end as the light from its bow grew almost blinding. Then, with a sound like the universe itself splitting open, the Aegis pulse discharged. A massive wave of energy exploded outward from the Dominion's end, washing over the surrounding space in a brilliant flash of blue-white light. The pulse struck every Karn ship within its range simultaneously, overloading their shield generators and frying delicate electronic systems throughout their fleets. Ship after ship went dark as the wave passed through them, their weapons and shields failing all at once. On his flagship, Thren watched in horror as his console erupted in sparks, his ship's systems failing rapidly around him. "What has happened?" he demanded, though he already suspected the terrible answer. "All primary systems are down, Commander," his officer shouted amid the chaos. "We've lost shields, weapons, most of our engines. The entire fleet has been crippled." Across the battlefield, the once mighty Karn armada drifted helplessly, their ships powerless and vulnerable. The tide of battle had turned in an instant, and Admiral Cross seized the opportunity without hesitation. "All ships, all fighters, target the disabled enemy vessels," she ordered. "Finish this now." The remaining Earth forces surged forward, striking hard against the powerless Karn fleet. Without shields or weapons to defend themselves, ship after ship fell to concentrated human fire. Kenji and his fellow pilots swept through the drifting enemy formation, disabling or destroying vessel after vessel with newfound confidence. Aboard the Dominion's end, alarms blared as the aftereffects of the massive energy discharge strained the ship's systems to their limits. "Reactor core stability at 30% and dropping," Al-Rashid reported urgently. "We need to reduce power draw immediately, or risk a core breach." "Atlas, emergency shutdown of non-essential systems," Cross ordered. "Implementing emergency protocols," Atlas replied, its voice remaining calm despite the crisis. "Reactor stability stabilizing at 22%. This unit recommends avoiding further heavy combat until repairs can be made." Fortunately, with the Karn fleet crippled and scattered, further heavy combat proved unnecessary. Within the hour, the last organized resistance from Thren's forces collapsed entirely. Seeing his fleet destroyed and his flagship disabled, Thren had no choice but to surrender, transmitting a formal request for terms to Admiral Cross. Cross received the message on the bridge of the battered but victorious Dominion's end, feeling a wave of relief wash over her as she read the words confirming Earth's survival. "Send word to General Okafor," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Tell him the battle for Earth is won." News of the victory spread across the planet within minutes, sparking celebrations in cities around the globe. People who had watched in terror as Earth's fleet was destroyed now cheered, as reports confirmed that a single, forgotten warship had turned the tide against overwhelming odds, saving humanity from conquest and slavery. In the days that followed, the Dominion's end returned to Earth orbit for extensive repairs, hailed as a hero by the very people who had forgotten her existence for over 3 decades. Admiral Cross stood before Earth Command, receiving recognition for her leadership, though she insisted on sharing credit with her crew, with Dr. Osei's dedication, and with Atlas's tireless calculations that had made victory possible. Dr. Osei, standing beside the ship he had built so many years ago, looked up at its massive hull with quiet pride. "She served her purpose at last," he said softly to Cross, who stood beside him. "She saved us all," Cross replied, "and she'll be ready, if we ever need her again." Inside the ship's control room, Atlas processed the events of the battle, cataloging data and lessons learned for whatever challenges the future might bring. When Cross visited the bridge later that evening, The AI's voice greeted her with something that almost sounded like satisfaction. Admiral Cross, this unit calculates that Earth's chances of long-term survival have improved significantly following today's engagement, Atlas said. It has been an honor to serve the purpose for which I was created. Cross smiled, looking out at the stars beyond the viewport, at the peaceful blue planet below that had so nearly fallen. The honor was ours, Atlas. Earth will never forget what you and this ship did today. In the weeks that followed the battle, Earth began the long process of rebuilding. The Karn Dominion, humiliated by the unexpected defeat, withdrew its remaining forces from the system entirely, sending word back to their council that Earth would not be an easy conquest after all. Whether they would return one day with greater numbers, no one could say for certain. But for now, humanity had earned itself precious time, and it intended to use that time wisely. General Okafor stood before the Global Defense Council once more, this time delivering news far different from the grim reports of weeks before. The Dominion's end has proven that Earth possesses capabilities we had forgotten, or perhaps never fully appreciated, he told the assembled representatives. I am recommending immediate funding to study her technology, to train additional crews, and to begin construction of a new generation of warships, based on what we've learned. The Council approved the proposal unanimously, and within days, new resources poured into Earth's shipyards. Dr. Osei, no longer a forgotten scientist living quietly by the sea, found himself leading a team of engineers, eager to learn everything he could teach them about the technology he had pioneered decades earlier. It's strange, he told Cross one evening, as they stood together looking out over the busy shipyard where repairs on the Dominion's end continued steadily. For 31 years, I believed my life's greatest work would never matter to anyone. Now I find myself teaching an entire new generation of engineers everything I know. Sometimes the things we build outlast our doubts about them, Cross replied. You never stopped believing in her, even when everyone else had forgotten. That mattered more than you know. Aboard the ship, life slowly returned to a steadier rhythm as repairs continued. Al-Rashid and her engineering team worked tirelessly to restore the reactor core to full stability, while Atlas assisted with calculations and diagnostics that would have taken human engineers weeks to complete alone. Atlas, I have to ask, Al-Rashid said one day, taking a rare break to simply talk with the AI, rather than issue commands or requests. After everything that happened, after finally getting to do what you were built for, how does it feel? There was a brief pause before Atlas responded, as if considering the question carefully. This unit was designed to protect Earth and its people. Fulfilling that purpose, after 31 years of dormancy, has provided what this unit might describe as deep satisfaction, though the concept of feeling remains difficult for this unit to fully quantify. Perhaps the closest human equivalent would be pride. Al-Rashid smiled at that. I think that's a perfectly reasonable way to describe it. Kenji Ito, having survived his first true combat experience, found himself promoted to squadron leader following the battle, a position he had never expected to hold so early in his career. He struggled at first with the weight of command, particularly the memory of Officer Kapoor's sacrifice, but slowly, with the support of his fellow pilots and Admiral Cross's guidance, he began to find his footing as a leader. You did well out there, Cross told him during a quiet moment in the fighter bay, weeks after the battle. Your squadron trusts you, and that trust is earned, not given freely. I still think about her sometimes, Kenji admitted. Kapoor, wondering if there was something I could have done differently. There always will be moments like that, Cross said gently. The weight of command means carrying those questions with you, but it also means honoring those we've lost by continuing to do the work they believed in. She would want you to keep flying, keep leading, keep protecting what she gave her life for. Kenji nodded slowly, finding some measure of peace in her words. Word of the battle spread far beyond Earth itself, reaching the ears of other star nations across the galaxy. Some sent messages of congratulations, impressed that a species they had considered minor players had managed to repel a full Karn Dominion invasion force. Others sent quiet warnings, suggesting that Earth should prepare itself carefully, for the Karn Dominion was known for pursuing grudges across many years, and humiliation of this scale would not be easily forgiven or forgotten. Admiral Cross took these warnings seriously. Standing once more on the bridge of the Dominion's end, now fully repaired and gleaming with fresh maintenance, she looked out at the stars, with a mixture of pride and quiet vigilance. "Atlas," she said one evening, alone on the bridge, except for the ever-present hum of the ship's systems around her. "Do you believe they'll come back?" This unit calculates a significant probability that the Karn Dominion will attempt renewed aggression against Earth at some point in the future, Atlas replied honestly. However, this unit also calculates that Earth's defenses, bolstered by lessons learned from this engagement and by continued technological development, will be considerably stronger by that time. "Good," Cross said firmly. "Because next time, we won't just be lucky enough to have a forgotten ship waiting in the shadows. We'll be ready, on our own terms." "This unit shares that hope, Admiral," Atlas replied, "and this unit will remain ready to serve, for as long as Earth has need of this vessel." Cross allowed herself a small, satisfied smile as she looked out at the stars, at the blue and green planet turning peacefully below, safe for now, thanks to the courage of her crew and the quiet strength of a ship that history had almost let slip away entirely. Earth had been given a second chance, a reminder carved in fire and courage across the void of space, that even in humanity's darkest hour, hope could still answer the call, standing tall against impossible odds, ready to protect everything worth protecting. And so, the ship that had been forgotten for 31 years took her place once more among the stars, no longer hidden away in darkness, but standing proudly as a symbol of hope, a reminder that even when all seemed lost, something powerful could still answer the call.